Hi, Jeremy here, Modern Vitality. In today's video, we're looking at the top 3 medicinal mushrooms for fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is a complex chronic inflammatory condition. It usually comes with brain fog, fatigue and exhaustion, wandering pains. There's a whole plethora of other symptoms that usually come in the clinical picture too. So when we look at some of my favorite medicinal mushrooms that I usually recommend to some of the people I work with that have fibromyalgia, we're going to be looking at just a few of these. There are many, right? But I'm going to give you the top 3 today. And just know that this isn't just about symptomatic relief. You want to have a way to integrate these types of interventions, whatever you're using, herbs, mushrooms, supplements, prescription medications, whatever it is, exercises, anything you're doing that's changing your body. You want to have a framework and a plan. So I'll explain some more about that too. But first, let's start by exploring some of these mushrooms. All right, let's get started. So let's take a look at our top 3 medicinal mushrooms. And just know, of course, this is not medical advice. I'm not your doctor. You're a responsible adult and you're here to learn more information. And you can, of course, talk to your doctor about your specific situation. So our first one is Fu Ling. This is a Chinese herb, this mushroom, and it's one not a lot of people in the West have heard of. But the other name for Fu Ling is Poria or Poria cocos. And it looks like this kind of ball of fungus, and it grows down at the base of pine trees, and inside it's all white. And in Eastern medicine, we say this herb drains dampness. Now, why is this important? With any kind of inflammatory, complex chronic condition, there tends to be a problem with the fluid metabolism, meaning we don't move fluids around as well as we used to in our bodies. So the consequences of that are that the cells themselves are typically dry because they're not getting the fluids they need, and then the intercellular space starts to become more wet and soggy. Now, this is something where a lot of pathogens try to encourage this in our body, this kind of pooling, because they tend to like it wet. Especially mold is a famous one for this, breaking down the sodium-potassium pumps and creating more of a swampy, soggy environment. Especially on the face, if we start to get puffy under our eyes, or we start to get a softer jawline, or we're just retaining water, the face gets puffy. That's one of the easiest places to see this, but it's of course happening throughout the whole body. The fluid metabolism goes off. So Fu Ling is a very commonly used herb in Eastern medicine to help drain that dampness out without dehydrating people. Modern research is also showing Fu Ling has some antiviral properties, which is important if you're dealing with any kind of hidden pathogen in the context of a complex chronic health condition. There are also some antioxidant properties that can help prevent the stress on your body from oxidation, which is usually happening because your body's hunting down some kind of pathogen, right? We're getting that oxidation effect. And we can use this medicinal mushroom to clean up some of that damage. There are also hints of anti-cancer potential. Does this mean that this is the cure for cancer? No, absolutely not. I'm not making that claim or suggesting that. But there are some studies which are showing that it has some decent effects, especially if you use it in combination with other therapies. And again, this would likely have to do with the immune function of this herb. It also has anti-inflammatory properties, which is good, especially if you've been smoldering for a long time with a complex chronic health condition. And we have blood sugar regulation. Why is that important? Well, blood sugar regulation is important for a lot of reasons. One of them that I'll offer here is that when we have pathogens, especially a fungal infection, especially that, but other pathogens too, like bacteria, they eat blood sugar. Right? That's what their fuel is. So anything we can do to regulate the blood sugar will help to keep them from gorging and getting out of control. It's very important to understand this. A lot of antifungal type herbs also tend to regulate blood sugar. And then we also have its use as a traditional beauty tonic. So this is one of these secrets that ladies have for glowing skin, right? They're using Fu Ling. And that makes sense because it's helping to shuttle the fluids around and not having these dry places and these puffy places, and instead having more nurtured cells. You would think that would only contribute to something we would consider superficial like beauty, but hey, who doesn't like to look good and feel good, right? Here's some research on Fu Ling. Biological activities and potential health benefits of polysaccharides from Poria cocos. That's Fu Ling. And we have a bit of history here, and then we have a summary: anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and antiviral. It's very important. They're showing there's some potential for further development for cancer as an adjuvant therapy. It's got immunomodulatory and antiviral effects. This herb is an underrated and not well-known powerhouse, especially when we're in like stage 1, 2, and 3. Here's a paper on the anti-hyperglycemic properties, which means it regulates blood sugar of crude extract from Poria cocos. That's the Fu Ling, right? blood sugar regulation, very important. Here's another one on the anti-inflammatory effects of this extract from the poria fungus. Here's another one. Fu Ling, a Chinese herbal drug, modulates cytokine secretion by human peripheral blood monocytes. This is showing the effects on the immune system. This herb is an underrated powerhouse. Fu Ling usually comes in powder and in pills, and most often it's in formulas. So you can get the single herb Fu Ling in a powder form. Some places will encapsulate it, but usually, traditionally, you use this mushroom within the context of a larger formula of Chinese herbs that are set up to balance everything out. Because we're not trying to do one thing to just grab a silver bullet, right? We have these formulas that work together in synergy. So traditionally, you wouldn't really see Fu Ling used by itself all that often, although sometimes it does happen. All right, our next one is turkey tail. So turkey tail has been shown to increase immune system function. Now, is this a bad thing? What if I have an autoimmune condition? Well, it seems to be that turkey tail creates a bit more immune specificity, which can be good. It's also antiviral, has some antiviral properties, which is helpful if you have a lingering virus, right, or viruses. And it's been shown to have some anti-tumor properties. In fact, turkey tail is becoming quite a powerhouse, especially in Japan and in China, where they've isolated some of the extracts from this, and they're using it in conjunction with chemotherapy and other types of cancer treatments, and they're getting really, really promising results. When we start looking into medicinal mushrooms, it's helpful to understand that there are different types of fungus out in nature, and a lot of the medicinal mushrooms are the type that grow on trees or decaying wood. And it's really quite interesting because what you'll have is the mycelium, which are basically like the roots. It's the thin, thready strands of root material that are inside of the decaying log. And then you'll have the actual fruiting body, which are the pretty mushrooms that we see coming out. Now that mycelium is going in and it's decomposing the wood. These types of mushrooms tend to have a very special skill set for creating enzymes to help them break things down. They can break down very hard things, just like we can't just eat a tree. We don't have the enzyme capacity to eat wood for the most part, but these mushrooms do. They have this enzyme capacity. So what else they've been looking to do with these is train them to break down pollutants. And turkey tail is one of the more promising mushrooms for this. So the mycelium has in its DNA the recipe for all kinds of enzymes. They can break down all kinds of stuff. And when you put them in the right environment, they'll start to activate that part of their DNA and start to make new enzymes. So it's really quite interesting because if you're looking at these medicinal mushrooms, oftentimes we harvest the fruiting bodies. Like I go out with my kids in the forest and we'll harvest turkey tail and we'll make a tincture and a double extraction. We just cut off the actual little mushrooms there. But another way to look at this, and something you may consider pursuing, is to try to find a company that will provide the mycelium, because the mycelium is stronger with that enzymatic breakdown, if that's something you feel like you need. This is where we have more of a capacity to start to break down pollutants that shouldn't be in our system, that shouldn't be in our ecosystem, and shouldn't be in our body system. It's really quite interesting because these mushrooms are nature's way of handling problems. And when we have all these toxins coming at us in the modern world, we need to have new solutions to help offset some of this. And I'm talking about things like microplastics, pesticides, heavy metals, like all the pollutants, nanoparticles, maybe the mushrooms are a way to go with that too. All these new pollutants that we're being exposed to, this is the remediation team. Interestingly, I found a study, which I'll show you in just a minute, about fermented substrate. And what that means is they took samples of the wood, right? Just the wood. And they saw if that had any effect on people's bodies, on their immune system and different factors they're measuring. And then they took examples of the actual mycelium from the mushroom and to see how that would affect people's bodies. And then there was a third section, which is the fermented substrate, which is the wood that's been basically kind of chewed on by the mycelium, which is fermented because it's starting to break it down. And it turns out that the wood, once it becomes fermented by the mycelium, actually has some healing capacity too in terms of immune support. So you may want to try to find a company that will provide mycelium or fermented substrate as part of their turkey tail product. And that's if you need to break down more like toxins that are deep in your body. I would consider that. And let's consider it a little bit hypothetical, but I do have research to back this up. Here's some research on turkey tail. Anti-inflammatory activities of the chemical constituents isolated from Trametes versicolor. That's the turkey tail, Trametes. And we have a whole pile of very pretty little molecules. And we can see the effects on nitric oxide and TNF alpha and interleukin 6, which shows that we're going to have some immune modulating capabilities here. Here's an interesting one I found. This is an extract from turkey tail, and they've been finding people who are taking opioids like morphine for pain, for example, for arthritis in this study, they can start to build up a tolerance, and you can actually use turkey tail to reset that tolerance. Isn't that interesting? Upregulates the level of beta endorphin, reduces the level of interleukin 1, nitric oxide, and PGE2. It's so fascinating. These mushrooms, I'll tell you, there's a ton of research on this stuff. I'd encourage you to do your own and start digging around because you're going to find quite a wormhole. These are very dynamic mushrooms. They have a lot of actions in the body. Here's another one. The mycelium of the Trametes versicolor mushroom and its fermented substrate. So remember I told you that they digest wood, and in order to do that, they excrete enzymes that can break down the wood. And then we also can see what happens if we take some of the wood that's been fermented. That also has a medicinal effect. So here they have a nice little drawing of what the mycelium look like inside the log, and then the actual fruit body coming out. So you can get an image of that. And what they did in this study that I found very interesting is they've now compared just the plain old substrate, right? Whatever they were growing it on by itself. And then they have also, when you add the turkey tail mushroom and they grow the mycelium in there, and now you have the mycelium itself, and then you also have fermented substrate. So they did basically a 3-arm exploration here comparing these 3 substances. And for the most part, the initial substrate was the control because it didn't have much of an effect. There was one example where it had some effect, but that's kind of interesting and odd. And surprisingly, the fermented substrate showed up to be medicinal as well. We can see increased production of pro-inflammatory immune activating cytokines, and we can see increased antiviral cytokine production, and we can see increased anti-inflammatory cytokine production. So you can see this balanced toning of the immune system. And this is all from the mycelium and the fermented substrate from turkey tail. Very interesting. And then following that thread, we have another paper here, Influence of Treatment Conditions on the Oxidation of Micropollutants by Trametes versicolor. So we see turkey tail here being put to work to break down organic compounds, basically pollutants, pharmaceuticals, biocides, all this stuff that gets stuck in our wastewater treatment plants. Okay, this is what they're studying here. This is more of an environmental study. So we need to understand that what's going to make this work in the environment are the enzymes coming off of this fungus. So if we have these things in our bodies as well, could we theoretically use this fungus and its enzymes to help break those down? Can we clean up our own internal pollution? Very interesting. There are so many of these. Here's one more. Trametes versicolor, that's the turkey tail, modifies human fecal microbiota composition. What does that mean? It means it's cleaning up the gut microbiome. Check this out. When you take turkey tail mushroom, you are changing your levels of gut bacteria. So we have elevated lactobacillus, right? Elevated bifidobacterium, reduced Clostridium, Staphylococcus, Enterococcus. This is so important. You're taking the bacteria that tend to go wild and cause dysbiosis, and they're getting capped down, and the bacteria that are friendly and will help us be healthier are getting higher and higher in concentration. You can use turkey tail as one way to start to rebalance your gut microbiome. Isn't that cool? We're looking at like a stage 2 approach here. Stage 1 for some of the immune function, stage 2 for the rebuilding of the gut. This is a wonderful mushroom. Turkey tail often comes in powders. You can get it powdered, you can take it in capsules, and tinctures are quite common. And with tinctures, it's usually going to be a double extraction. So you don't want to just have a tincture that's just an alcohol extraction of just the mushrooms in alcohol. You want to, if you're going to make it yourself, or if you're going to look at someone who has made it, it should be a double extraction, which means that the mushrooms have soaked in alcohol for a good amount of time, 2 to 6 weeks, something like that. And then the mushrooms have then been taken out and then boiled. And then the liquid from the boiling is mixed with the alcohol extraction. So that way you've got all the alcohol-soluble active ingredients and you've got all the water-soluble active ingredients mixed together. So you should see a double extraction. Okay, there's my hot tip for turkey tails. Number 3, lion's mane. Lion's mane is not only a beautiful mushroom, but it's also getting quite a lot of publicity right now because it's showing potential with neurogenesis. And this is a big deal. What is neurogenesis? It means nerves regrowing. Okay, this is a huge deal because for the longest time in Western medicine, conventional medicine, we thought once a nerve had damage or died, it was done and gone and you could only decline and degenerate. And since our nerves are so important for all of our functions, losing nerve ability means that your life is going to get severely impaired. Now, why is this important for complex chronic health conditions? Well, as you may know, nerve damage is oftentimes part of the prolonged condition. When we have all this inflammation going on, eventually it gets to the nerves. Or if we have pathogens coming in, eventually they're trying to get to the nerves. So we need to make sure that we protect our nerves because that's the communication. That's the wiring. You've got to think of your body as an integrated whole, and it needs a healthy nervous system so that your brain can communicate to your toes and your heart and your gut and your eyes, your fingertips. Everything has to be connected. And the nerves are the wires that help us do that. So we want to keep our nerves strong. So we have nerve growth factor, we have brain-derived neurotropic factor. Those are the NGF and BDNF. And what we're finding with lion's mane is that it's very active in terms of promoting nerve growth factor, which means your peripheral nerves. So if you got an injury or you had neuropathy, which is very common with complex chronic health conditions, then this would be one possible avenue to help start feeding these nerves so they can start to regrow. And the BDNF, the brain-derived neurotropic factor, is what helps our brain and our central nervous system grow new cells and form new connections. And people are talking a lot about neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to kind of rewire itself and adapt to new environments and learn. And BDNF helps a lot with that. And lion's mane can help promote that. So lion's mane is massive, totally massive. And when we start looking at this, we may think, wow, I should start this right now. Well, maybe. But what I would say is fit lion's mane into a 4-stage process is probably going to come in around stage 3 or stage 4, where we're already done with stage 1 and stage 2, where we've cleared out a lot of the inflammation and the pathogens. And now here comes lion's mane to help clean up and build the nervous system back. We also see it helping with mood and cognition, which of course, if it makes your brain better and stronger, it's going to give you a better chance of having a good mood, and it's going to improve your cognitive abilities. Like your brain will fire better if it's, physically there. We're also seeing some hepatoprotective capabilities of lion's mane, and hepato means liver. So these are liver protective functions, which is good because if we've been dealing with complex chronic health conditions for any period of time, the liver has been taking a beating as it's tried to get all this stuff out of the body that doesn't belong there. So we want to rebuild the liver. And this is one of many tools we can use to do that. Lion's mane keeps going though. It's got antioxidant properties. It's got anti-aging properties, and that's a function of the antioxidant properties. It's also been shown to be quite gastroprotective, meaning the stomach, the intestines. It can help to regenerate some of the lining there and help keep our digestive system safe and strong. So maybe you could use this a bit in stage 2 if you're working on your digestive system, but I would really start to pump it up around stage 3, stage 4 when we're in the rebuild phase. Let's take a look now at some of the research on lion's mane. Look at this. The reported health-promoting properties of the mushroom fruit bodies, mycelia, and bioactive pure compounds include antibiotic, anti-carcinogenic, anti-diabetic, anti-fatigue, anti-hypertensive, anti-hyperlipidemic, that means takes cholesterol down, anti-senescence, that means senescence is when we decline as we age, so it helps us age better without declining, cardioprotective, hepatoprotective, liver protective, right? Nephroprotective, kidney protective, and neuroprotective properties, and improvement of anxiety, cognitive function, and depression. This thing is a powerhouse. Here's another one. Neurotrophic properties of the lion's mane medicinal mushroom. So this is showing some of the factors in terms of nerve growth factor, right? NGF, and how that can help with peripheral nerve regeneration. Here's another one. Here we go. Over the past decade, it has been demonstrated to have various promising bioactivities. We have anti-tumor, immunomodulation, anti-gastric ulcer, neuroprotection, neuroregeneration, antioxidation, hepatoprotection, anti-hyperlipidemia, anti-hyperglycemia, there's blood sugar regulation again, anti-fatigue, anti-aging. Here's a study where they used alcohol to tear up the stomach lining of rats and give them ulcers, and then they used lion's mane mushroom to help regenerate that stomach lining from alcohol damage. Lion's mane can come in tinctures, it can come in powders, and it can come as a culinary. This is the only mushroom on the list that we've done today that really does well when you just saute it in butter and garlic, and it's just delicious. I love cooking lion's mane. You can get grow kits, you can grow your own, and then you can involve your family. Like my kids love harvesting mushrooms, and we cut them up, and it's a really tasty mushroom. It's a lot of times compared to lobster or crab meat. It has that same type of consistency, and you can cook it. I will say, however, that I do think from my own personal experience that you'll get a stronger medicinal effect from an extract that's concentrated, like a tincture or like a powder. And the culinary obviously has some good properties. But if you want to go medicinal, you're going to want to have something that's easy to take. You can take it every day without having to like prepare it and cook it and all that. I think tinctures and powders are going to be the way to go with that. So these mushrooms are phenomenal, especially when used at the right time on a healing process. And what do I mean by right time? Well, the first thing, okay, that we always look at is the immune system. And the reason why is because, well, I'm going to tell you, the body has basically an order that it likes to be interacted with. Nobody's talking about this. It comes from very, very old Eastern medicine. It's not even what I learned in acupuncture school when I graduated back in 2009. They weren't talking about this stuff. However, it's way older than that. It's just, you got to find the lineages and you got to find the people, which I did, who understand this stuff. The body has an order. There are so many therapies that seem like a good idea for your condition. However, if you just throw everything at it, you're doing the shotgun approach. It's a mess. It's not scientific, right? You can't tell what's doing what. You wind up taking a bunch of stuff. It's not an easy process. But the best thing to do is to start organizing all of your strategies and go, okay, this is more of an immune strategy. This is more of a digestive strategy, right? All these over here, these are more for stress relief, neuroadrenal. These over here, this is more blood circulation. These over here, this is more boosting and supplementing deficiencies. This is more hormonal. You can start to make buckets, okay? And then you line your buckets up. And we're going to talk about the first 4 today, because that's where most people get the most benefits. In fact, most people go through the first 3 and they get the most benefits. So stage 1, immune system. Anything you have that's working on your immune system goes in that bucket. That's where we start. You want to have a very clear strategy here, and you want to be able to do things in an order that makes sense. So start with your immune system, because that's going to help get rid of a lot of the big problems, including hidden pathogens, including non-specific immune function, where you're just like smoldering and inflamed. It's going to help with biofilm breakdown. It's going to help with lymphatic flow. You're basically getting these things out of your body that don't belong there so that you can start to heal. You want to get the inflammation down. Okay, this is really important. Next is digestion, right? Digestive system. So some things are aimed more at digestion, which you want to have a healthy digestive system, okay? Because that way you can start to not only digest your food better and get more energy out of that and more nutrition, but also your digestion and your immune system are intimately connected. Your digestion is where most of your immune system lives anyway. This is really cool. We're finding this out now through modern science, but it's, validating things that we've known in Eastern medicine for 3,000, 5,000, something thousand years, okay? Very important. We also have gut dysbiosis, which means the balance of the little creatures that live in your intestines needs to be restored. So there can be some things that are growing and getting out of hand. There can be some things that should be there that aren't, due to a variety of factors, including what we eat, but also what we're exposed to. All the toxins, chemicals, pesticides, all this stuff, mycotoxins, right? There's a lot of things going on. Other meds, antibiotic use. There's a lot of stuff we can attribute to this imbalance in the guts. So you want to start to restore that. That's the next step. Stage 3, neuroadrenal, stress time. Okay, this is where we get going with the way our mind is working, the way our nervous system is working, the way we handle stress. If we feel neurologically overwhelmed, if we feel like we have a very close trigger, right? When something, little thing happens and it's like, whoom, it just, we get so, stressed out. We want to start to increase that threshold. This is where a lot of different therapies can be useful. There are herbs, there are supplements, there's breath work, like breathing practices, there's all kinds of stuff. And this is where those live. One of the mistakes I see happen a lot of times is people try to start there. We go, it's mind over matter. I healed my mind. But really, it becomes very difficult. For example, like if you've got a bunch of parasites and heavy metals in your body, it becomes very difficult to will that stuff out. Whereas you could just go after your immune system first and get that cleaned up. And now you have a stronger base to stand on when you start to work on your own personal growth and spiritual practices and the way you show up in the world and the way you handle and metabolize stress. Okay, you set yourself up for success if you do things in the right order. This is also when we tend to get the sleep cycle dialed in better, right? Get that circadian rhythm going. It's lovely. Okay, we get back in touch with nature and how we evolved. The fourth one, blood circulation. This is where we start to move blood. This is where we start to really feed the cells and the tissue so they can grow, right? They can repair. This is where exercise tends to come in. This is one of the kind of mistakes I see people make too, is they try to start here. They start at stage 4, blood circulation, by starting some kind of exercise regimen when they have a complex chronic inflammatory condition and fatigue and exhaustion, and there's no energy to be had. And we think, I better push through, right? I better push through it because, exercise is good for me and maybe I just need to just break through. And what happens instead, because there's still inflammation, that's just rampant in the immune system, most likely due to hidden pathogens or some other thing setting off the immune system, okay? What you do when you exercise is you're just recirculating all that inflamed blood, and then you get PEMS, post-exertional malaise syndrome, where you're knocked out for like a week, just suffering, like with this hangover from exercise. This is what happens with skipping steps. But if we do it right, if we get that stuff cleared out in the first place, by the time you get to stage 4, all of a sudden taking a walk or doing exercise or playing pickleball or whatever you're into, right? Kayaking, whatever it is, now is not going to be such a threat to your body because you're not circulating around a bunch of inflamed blood. This is really important to have this distinction. I've seen so many people who get so burned out because they try and fail, but you're trying things in the wrong order, which is why it's failing. There's nothing wrong with you specifically. There's no reason you can't exercise. You just can't exercise yet. It's not time yet. We have to get the rest of your system ready. Okay, so those are stages 1 through 4. So whatever you're doing, whatever therapies you're using, you want to start to examine that. And you want to start to understand, what system am I working on now? What system am I emphasizing with this? And can I make sure that before I'm working on, exercising or working on my stress relief or whatever it is, that I've started with stage 1 with my immune system? Can I make sure that? Okay, it's really, really important. When you go in the right order, just like a combination lock, when you go in the right order, then it opens, right? It opens up, it expands, your world gets bigger. If you go in the wrong order, you're just going to be, trying to bang your head against the wall while you're trying to bust into a locked door. It's a whole different deal. Most people think that unlocking healing is like finding the right key for the lock. And that's a misconception because it's not a key lock, it's a combination lock. All right, looking for a key means grabbing for a silver bullet and just hoping and praying that the latest supplement or whatever is going to just solve everything. There is no key. It's a combination. And the combination has to be the right stuff in the right order. Okay, those are the 2 caveats. This is just how it works. This is what I found. This is like the best way possible that I know to get somebody from feeling sick, shrinking world, not really happy about life, not much of a future, right? Frustrated, overwhelmed, exhausted, burned out, to working through the stages and then going, hey, I've been back to life again. I'm having sex again. I'm doing things. I'm showing up for my family. I'm throwing a party for my grandson or whatever. I'm traveling for a wedding. I'm in Europe walking along on cobblestone streets and I'm not getting tired. I'm in New Zealand hiking mountains and going down beaches when I used to have fibromyalgia and be afraid to leave a 2-mile radius of my house because I was going to be exhausted. Right? These are how you get those changes. It doesn't just happen magically. You've got to have the right combination, which anybody can learn. That's part of my job, as I see it. If you're struggling with a complex chronic health condition, you might consider not struggling alone. I've built an amazing community. We've got our own chat group. We're off of the big tech things. It's just our own private chat where you can come in and you can meet other people who are lovely and positive and vibrant and supportive. Really fantastic people from all over the world that are on various stages of their healing journey. They're working the stages, right? Immune, digestive, neuroadrenal, blood circulation. They're in their process. I'm in there every day. It's free to join. You can come on in. You can ask me anything. You can meet some other people. You can be inspired. You can ask them things. What's working for you? Here's where I am. Introduce yourself. Even if you're shy, even if you're an introvert, it's a fantastic community. There's plenty, you're going to be in good company with introverts there. There's plenty of introverts, right? We're very respectful. We're very kind. We're careful with each other's energy, right? We have very good boundaries in there. So we have a chat group. There's also a vault where I've got interactive videos where you can start to really get yourself a plan so you can know what you're doing. What's your next practical step towards getting your life back? And again, you can ask me anything in there. It's fantastic. That's where I'm answering questions. I'm not in the comments section of YouTube. I'm having deep conversations and actual connection in my own group. So I'd encourage you, right? If you'd like to join that, there's an application. You're a detective, you'll find it. It's near this video somewhere. And you can get your application sent in. And when I take a look, if you look like a good fit for our group, for what we're doing, I'll let you know. And I keep the group pretty cozy. We keep it like to 1 to 200 people is about the max. That way I know who's in there. And when I answer your question, it's very specific and I know who I'm talking to. Okay. But what happens with that is that it's capped. So it does fill up. So if I see your application come in and it looks like a good fit, it might be a month, might be 2 months before you get in. I'll try to get you in on the next monthly cohort. I'll do my best because I know that you're excited and you want to get in there. So I try not to make people wait, but just know if it does take a little while, that's why. So that's our group. I would encourage you to join. In the meantime, you might consider subscribing to this channel. That way you can get more health information like this video that helps you instead of just kind of mindlessly scrolling, which we all fall into sometimes, but you could actually train YouTube to show you videos that help you get your life back, right? Isn't that cool? Okay, so let's get you feeling better. Cheers.